Today we're going over the best rally combos in Rise of Kingdoms. Whether you are setting those rallies yourself or you're advising other people in your kingdom what rallies to launch, this video will help you get better trades. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in this video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, we are going to go over the very best rallies for each troop type: infantry, cavalry, and archers. And I'll try to break it down for where these rallies are good, what garrisons you should set the rally against, and where you should really avoid using them. We're going to start with infantry, because there's really only one infantry rally, and it's not even all that good in my opinion. And that is Pakal and Herald. Now, I need to sort of set the expectation here for where this guidance is coming from. I play in really intense Imperium KVKs, where you have to have the meta. Meta stands for the most efficient tactic available, or you're going to take a bad trade, okay? In a lot of kingdoms, you can use some of these combos, and they're going to be perfectly fine. But I'm talking about the toughest of the toughest situations, the most geared out opponents. That's the sort of stuff that I'm helping you to dismantle. That's my goal anyways. So when I say that Pakal and Herald is not a particularly good rally, keep in mind that in a lot of situations, it will work just fine. But against the best of the best, this is a really low tier rally. Why is that? There's two problems. First of all, the Pakal Herald combo doesn't actually do all that damage. In fact, the signature move of this combo is damage mitigation and also really high counterattack. Now, I've covered in the past why this combo works. Herald is giving you lots of attack, and Pakal mitigates the downside of the defense reduction that Herald does. That comes from his rally-based skill right over here, the chance to remove some of these weakening effects. So as I was saying, the problem is twofold. First of all, it's a very low damage rally. Great anti-swarm. You can't really swarm this rally without it really hurting. And on top of that, it's countered by so many things. It's even countered by the new cavalry commanders. Jan really counters this combo, which is a huge bummer. So not only can you not use infantry to rally cavalry particularly effectively right now, but also the damage is so low that an enemy can often find a way to reinforce. So getting the burn is very difficult. That makes this a really undesirable rally in Ark of Osiris. It makes it a really undesirable rally if you're trying to take a pass or get a burn on a flag. So this is one of my least favorite rallies to run. And the other reason that it's such a bad rally to run is that right now in Rise of Kingdoms, infantry are much better served being in the garrison, because you have a really, really top-tier series of infantry garrisons, and I made a video all about that topic, by the way. Card will be up in the top. I'll remind you of that at the end. So I don't think you should be launching Pakal Herald rallies really at all. Save your infantry to kill off in the garrison. That is the better plan, and unfortunately, this is the only infantry rally to talk about. People try to use Guan, and it always fails. People try to use CJ, and it fails. I have not seen that work, so stick with Pakal Herald if you're using infantry, but really, I would not run this rally at all. So this, by the way, brings us to archers. Let's talk about archers, because right now, they are the Swiss Army knife of rallies. Let me tell you, they have options on options, and they each do a specific thing very well. Your base level model here is always going to include Henry. Henry is a beast for rallies. He's really tanky. He's got solid anti-swarm technology in a couple places, actually. I mean, one of those things is that you take a big damage factor here, but also he's got elevated counterattack damage. So Henry is really solid. And the question then is, who do you pair Henry with? You've got a couple options. One is to rock the Boudica Henry combo. And if you're looking for just an all-around, really good archer rally in almost anything you want to send it against, almost anything, then I will make the argument that the Boudica Henry is where it's at. And once they released Jan into the game, now there's actually a garrison that really heavily counters what the archers are doing. But up until that point, the Boudica Henry was just the all-around really solid combo that you could use. Now, if you wanted more anti-swarm, then there was a really clean answer here. And you actually swap out the Boudica and you bring in Nebu. And Nebu has so much counterattack. Oh my god. So you pair Nebu and Henry together, and that is almost, but not quite, like your Pakal Herald. Almost, but not quite like your Attila Takeda for archers. And it's a metaphor, okay? It's illustrating the point. It's not exactly like a, Attila Takeda, but you get the idea here. So if you wanted really high anti-swarm to at least punish the enemy when they try to swarm you, and they still probably will, then this is really great. And in a big Imperium KVK, you should expect that this rally will still get swarmed anyways. They're going to swarm it with so many people that they'll get away with it. And it's going to happen. It'll hurt a little bit, but they're going to get away with it. But if you use this rally in smaller KVKs or where less enemies are there to pay attention, then I think you'll find the anti-swarm here is really, really oppressive and will work very well. But there is one other archer combo. Like I said, the kind of a Swiss Army knife. They have so many good options here. If you really wanted to counter a Xeno very heavily, you bring in Gilgamesh, pair with Henry, and that combo is actually wicked. So Gilgamesh is doing a number of things, and you'll use him as the primary. First of all, you're reducing their health. Very strong. Second of all, he's actually, like, really stalwart. Got a bunch of health, and he does a 20% damage boost for troops that have less than 50% of units remaining. So when you're hitting a garrison, they're almost certainly going to be less than 50% of units remaining. In fact, the way that works is that low health troops that are in the garrison reinforcing actually count toward that 50%. So if somebody stayed behind from the last volley you launched, the last rally you launched on them, right? And they've got like 3,000 troops left out of 300,000, right? That hugely contributes toward being below 50% for the overall amount of the garrison troops remaining. So anyways, the 20% damage boost there is really, really big. And just the anti-heal from the blood craving, the crush that it puts there every time they heal is really, really oppressive. So Gilgamesh with Henry is the best way to really punish all of the Xeno variants, whether that's Xeno with Flavius or Xeno with YSS. It is going to do oppressive amounts of damage. Now, if you really want to tech out, I mean, if you really want to go over the top and you're doing a multi-rally, I think you will be really surprised at how effective it is to drop a Tommy somewhere into the combos that you're running the rallies with. This is like some advanced tech here, but I'm telling you, if you multi-rally something and you've got one of those multi-rallies not getting swarmed, okay, not taking any AoE skill damage, and you drop a Tommy in there, this skill damage taken boost is actually out of control, especially if you can get it stacking closer to that 45%. But this is really more kind of advanced tech. The other combos I was mentioning are far more standard and the ones that you'll see run in most situations. So from here, we've got to talk about the tried and true cavalry rallies, when to use them and where they're most powerful. And I'll say just like all around, your cavalry right now are probably your best rally option into most things except Xenoflavius. Xenoflavius really counters that, and we can talk about that a little bit, but the tried and true, extremely high damage rally is the XY Nevsky. Now, you knew this, right? And we've talked about XY Nevsky being really powerful for a very long time because it's not a new rally. But the reason this works is the extremely rapid skill cycle and all of the ways that they boost damage. You've got XY boosting all cavalry damage. You've got Nevsky boosting cavalry, or really all skill damage. And Nevsky brings so much tankiness that this combo works out really well. This is a very swarmable combo. But unlike the Pakal Herald, which we talked about being really low damage, this is really high damage, and you will put so much pressure on an enemy that they will struggle to keep the garrison full, which in and of itself makes it so they take worse and worse trades. This combo is obviously extremely good against archers, it works well against cavalry, and it's good against infantry as well, which is kind of shocking, with the exception of Xenoflavius, which shuts it down. And the reason that it shuts it down is that Flavius has the silence effect. It is also true that to some extent, you could use like Flavius with Skippy, and this also could give cavalry a little bit of a difficult time, especially if you're using that XY variant, because in part, XY is reducing the rage requirement. He is really dependent on having very fast skill cycles. If you can interrupt that, it really shuts this rally down. The other cavalry rally that I've found to be really effective, and I was kind of surprised about it, is Nevsky with Joan. And there's a couple reasons why this combo works so well, but very simply, it's just lots of skill damage, and it's got enough tankiness coming from the Nevsky that you can kind of get away with it. In some ways, this is a stronger rally than the XY Nevsky because of all of the normal attack damage boosts that you get. And normal attack damage, you need to remember, is going to make it so that you deal more damage to the thing you're directly targeting, and you do more damage to everybody who hits you directly. That's counterattack damage. So normal attack damage boosts are really powerful, and so Joan brings a lot of that. It's not, I'm not going to call it an anti-swarm rally, because it really isn't. But it does have more punish, certainly, than the XY Nevsky. So I've seen this rally start to get used more and more, and the question then becomes, well, who should be the primary? Should it be Joan or should it be the Nevsky? I think Nevsky's probably the better play, but there's several really important factors at play here. One is the talents that are available to you. Okay, there's more skill damage taken reduction on a Joan primary. I kind of like that for the open field. But the advantage of having the skill tree for the primary commander is that you actually can crank out a lot of damage. So if we get a look here at the talents, not only can you get some more rage restoration all the time, but also you get more skill damage dealt, which is a big deal, and you get more skill damage dealt over here. So because you're firing off skills so damn frequently with this combo, my understanding is that using Nevsky as the primary is probably going to crank out more damage for you. There is, of course, one more cavalry rally that we've got to talk about, one that I've been extremely critical of because I actually don't think it's all that good for most situations, and that's Attila with Nevsky. And Attila with Nevsky has really strong anti-swarm from Attila. And also, by the way, Nevsky's really tanky. So the combination of those things is actually, I don't want to call it punishing, but difficult to swarm. Let me put it like that. Because I think this is actually a low damage rally. Not quite like Pakal Herald, but it is a low damage dealt rally, which means that your enemy can often reinforce through it, or can reinforce easily enough that they're not taking bad trades by virtue of being so heavily pressured. So this is a difficult rally to get a burn with, and it's the kind of rally you launch if the enemy is swarming, if you're okay taking a worse trade, with the upside of still being able to rally at all and apply pressure when otherwise you couldn't have, because your rallies were just getting swarmed out. And this is the sort of thing that if you're the defender, you actually want to force your enemy to use a rally like this, a rally that is probably suboptimal, but is better than nothing. And that's kind of the goal. So this rally is better than nothing, but is probably suboptimal. And the area where I feel like you can get away with this more is, strangely enough, in Ark of Osiris. And the reason that I say that this strangely enough works well in Ark of Osiris is kind of twofold, maybe even threefold. I'll give you a couple reasons. First of all, I think one of the best garrisons you can run in Ark is Jad with YSS. So great news, you can stuff a Jad YSS with full cavalry into this rally. And once you take the garrison, you can swap that in to be the captain. So that's kind of a big win. You have your garrison already full of cavalry. So that in and of itself is kind of a nice perk. But also, unlike in KVK, where people could swarm something, okay, and they could get pretty beat up, but they can go back to their city and they can just be right back out again, okay? In Ark of Osiris, you can't do that. I mean, it's a long walk each way. So actually draining the enemy's troops if they try to swarm you is a pretty big deal. So I had this used against us when we were battling against C9N, and I thought they used it to really great effect. They didn't just run it on its own. They had enough troops nearby, and they used it when they didn't necessarily have all the reinforcements there right away. Like, you could trickle in the reinforcements and keep the pressure on because this rally was going to keep going. And it was very difficult for us to deal with. So I actually found that in Ark, this performed better than I expected. And in KVK, I will advocate that this is a rally you can use when you have no other choice, and you do still think it's correct for you to keep rallying. So to summarize everything we've talked about in this video, and to give you some really great counters to some of the best garrisons, let's review here. If the enemy uses a Xeno, you want to use archers, and ideally, you want to use Gilgamesh as the primary, and then Henry as the secondary for maximum carnage. If the enemy uses a Flavius garrison, besides just like swarming it, if they use Flavius Skippy, I think that if you rally with cavalry, you're going to have some problems. You probably need to stick to archers here to get this done well. If for some reason you find yourself against an archer garrison, I feel like, Honey Art, like, This actually does better than you'd expect. You can't rally this with infantry. You really cannot. You're going to get absolutely pwned. But if you just set calves on this, I think you'll probably do really well. You could also probably just set archers on it. But I think cavalry is probably your best bet. Seems like a really clear choice for when you'd want to use calves. And I think really any of the cavalry variants will be just fine. If your opponent is using a Jad primary, Jadwiga with YSS, you probably don't want to use Pakal Herald. This might be one of the better arguments for when you could use it. I'll say this is probably your best bet is against a Jad, but you're probably better off just using XY Nevsky or some really high damage cavalry rally to take this thing down. I found that is probably the best way to go, and archers trade pretty decently into this, but archers will trade really badly, in my opinion, against the new Jan garrison. You go with Jadwiga and Jan, and this, I think, really shuts down infantry, strangely enough, and really shuts down archers. And if you're really worried about your enemy swapping out what they're garrisoning with mid-rally, which is something they can do, kind of the advantage of having Jad YSS and then switching it up to Jad Jan if somebody else jumps in as the captain, is that if the enemy sets something that might have been okay against you, like, archers might have been fine against, Jadwiga with YSS, you can actually start to really wreck them if you bring in Jan as the secondary. So that's the real danger of rallying against Jadwiga right now with something like archers, is that they could swap in a hard counter. If you rally with Pakal, for example, they could swap in this hard counter on Jan Ziska, and then you just have to cancel the rally or you're going to take really bad trades. So I think the safest thing to rally against cavalry right now is actually going to be your cavalry. Just use other cavalry to take out calves. This means that overall, right now, my recommendation is that infantry really are for garrisoning only, archers generally are for rallying only, and then cavalry work for both. But if you're looking for more information about commanders or even just garrisons specifically, I'll have two videos for you in the end screen in just a second. One is going to be my overall tier list. The other is going to be a look at the best garrison combos in the game and when to use them.